So this is something that we never ever talk about. Let's dive into a prospect out of the Boston Bruins organization who is just 23 years old and who is now retired. Today we're diving into Mason Langenbrunner, a Boston Bruins 5th round pick from 6 years ago in the 2020 NHL Draft. He was a 5th round guy, 151st overall, and he was born out of Dallas, Texas, USA. You may be thinking, wait a minute, that sounds a little bit familiar, and that would be correct. You see, Mason Langenbrunner was born in Dallas because his dad, Jamie Langenbrunner, was indeed a Dallas Star at the time of Mason's birth. So, kind of a nice connection there. Mason was born in Dallas when his dad was playing for Dallas. Jamie Langenbrunner had a long NHL career, highlighted with multiple productive seasons with New Jersey, the Stars, and inevitably the St. Louis Blues. Jamie, by the way, was working for the Boston Bruins. He has now switched over to being a special assistant to the GM in Nashville. But Jamie Langenbrunner has been with the Bruins organization for a long time. Mason Langenbrunner was drafted by the Boston Bruins in 2020. Say what you want about father-son dynamics being applicable in NHL settings, but it seems like Mason Langenbrunner is not going to have the opportunity to actually fulfill that in an on-ice role. Because Mason Langenbrunner, after suiting up for the Harvard University Crimson, playing a full 4 seasons with them, and finishing off his senior year as the captain, he's now retiring. And that's exactly what's going on here. You see, there was an article posted about on the Boston Globe by Kevin Paul DuPont earlier this morning that talks about a bunch of Boston Bruins related notes, Michael DiPietro, Jeremy Swayman, the goaltender situation. And I know this is behind a paywall. That's why it says here I need to pay $1 for 6 months to get unlimited access to this article. But within this piece, there is a pretty interesting update on Mason Langenbrunner. And this was actually posted about by Mark Allered, also on BNG Productions and their website. Bruins prospect and Harvard graduate Mason Langenbrunner hangs up the skates, per a Boston Globe report. This article on ProHockeyRumors.com goes out there and gives us all the details we need to know. The Boston Bruins had until August 15th to sign 2020 5th round pick Mason Langenbrunner to his ELC after he finished his senior season at Harvard this past spring. However, he won't be signing with Boston or anywhere else for that matter. The 23-year-old D-man is hanging up the skates without ever playing a pro game, Kevin Paul DuPont of the Boston Globe wrote Saturday. Langenbrunner, the son of longtime NHLer and now former Bruins assistant GM Jamie Langenbrunner, captained the Crimson last season to conclude his collegiate career. He was a 5th round pick by the Bruins in 2020 out of Eden Prairie High School in Minnesota, and since he was just born 2 days before the cutoff before that year's draft, still had another year of high school hockey ahead of him before making the jump to high-level junior hockey in the USHL with the Fargo Force in 2021-2022. Langenbrunner was one and done in Fargo before heading into Harvard. While the 6'3" righty had great offensive flashes in high school, he was never more than a depth option in Cambridge. He was a mainstay in the lineup, cracking the 30-game mark every year, but only totaled 26 points with a -5 record in 130 games. Now here is the info that I think everybody has been interested in. Instead of heading into pro hockey, Mason Langenbrunner is already leveraging his business degree as a partner in a pair of startup companies, according to Kevin Paul DuPont for the Boston Globe. As for his father, Jamie left Boston back in May after 11 years in the Bruins front office to join the Predators as special assistant to their new GM Chris McFarland. In fact, if you go into the article itself, the one that's behind a paywall, you can see Jamie speaking about his son's decision to leave, and he says, yeah, it's amazing that he's able to pursue his passion. So, very passionate about business, and he went to Harvard Business School in order to fulfill that. That is actually so great to see somebody take that path, even though they may have had pro hockey playing opportunities. Mason Langenbrunner was one of 3 prospects coming out of college that Boston had to sign by the August 15th deadline to retain their rights. It doesn't look like they'll be retaining forward Oskar Jelvik from that group either. The 2021 fifth-rounder signed with Sweden's Regla BK in May after wrapping up an injury-plagued senior year at Boston College. There are still negotiations to be held with goaltender Philip Zveldebak, a 2021 fourth-rounder who has stopped Providence to a Hockey East regular season championship this year. So the Bees still have some guys to sign, but it does seem like Mason Langenbrunner is not going to do that. This is a really interesting progression that I don't think we've seen often amongst National Hockey League drafted players. A guy who genuinely is given the opportunity to sign, a guy who plays a full 4 seasons in college, and instead of continuing his hockey career, instead of even going to the AHL or the ECHL or Europe, he decides, no, I'm going to use my business degree. I want to participate in a bunch of startups. He's 23 years old, so obviously if there was a time to start playing pro hockey, it would be now. But if Mason Langenbrunner, the son of an NHL legend in Jamie Langenbrunner, generally thinks to himself, yeah, I'd rather be doing business than actually playing pro hockey, then all the power to you, man. Like, let's be real. Playing hockey is a tough thing to do, and especially for people who want to have long, healthy lives. I'm not saying that playing hockey and being an athlete ain't healthy, but there's a lot of damage that your body goes through over the years as a pro, even if you're in Sweden or the second-tier Swedish league versus being in the NHL. Like, it's all tough. It's all tough on the body, and some people would prefer just the security of being in an office, and that's totally fine, especially if Langenbrunner is going through all these startups. It's like, yeah, there's some ambition there, man. He's not just going out there and taking a corporate job in whichever big name brand already exists and that you could just go and apply to. He's starting up his own businesses. That's pretty cool. So, Mason Langenbrunner, everybody, if you're a Harvard University Crimson fan who paid attention to this team throughout the course of the past 4 years, then you can let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Mason Langenbrunner and his overall career? Obviously, his dad, Jamie, was a really decorated NHL player. Did he hit 1,000 games? I think he did. Yeah, he hit 1,000 games and 600 NHL points, not to mention being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion and an Olympic silver medalist. So Jamie Langenbrunner obviously was a pretty big force for the Devils and the Stars once upon a time. Kind of coincidental, I feel, that both him and his son are leaving the Boston Bruins organization in the same summer. Jamie to go to Nashville, and Mason to go into startups. So, yeah, pretty interesting update, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Mason Langenbrunner and this update here with him. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.